What's up, YouTube? It's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low, and I am back again with another video. And today's video is another episode of the NBA Mythbusters. And in this series, what I do is I take an argument that may favor a player, a team, or a specific era in the NBA history and put it to the test and see if it is indeed true or if it's just a complete myth. And in today's video, the subject at hand is Scottie Pippen. Now, the perception of Scottie Pippen is completely different depending on who you talk to. Some people believe that Scottie Pippen is just one of the greatest players of all time because of his well-rounded talents. And some people believe that he is fairly overrated, and the only reason why people know him because he played on a team with Michael Jordan and was able to ride that coattails and win 6 championships. So in today's video, we're going to look at both sides of these arguments, put it to the test, and see if it is true or if it's not. Now, with all that being said, let's get straight into the video. So the first argument we're going to talk about is, where does Scottie Pippen rank amongst all-time great small forwards? Now, it is widely known that LeBron James and Larry Bird are 1 and 2, the first and second greatest small forward of all time. However, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way to the 10th selection is kind of up in the air, and a lot of people may debate this back and forth, and I've seen quite a few videos on YouTube, and some people have different rankings. But where exactly does Scottie Pippen land in this argument? I've seen some people make the argument that he is a top 3 small forward of all time. Some people may argue he is somewhere in the top 5. Some people may argue top 10, and I've also heard some people say that he's not even top 10 anymore. So let's take a deeper look and let's see what's true and what's not true. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at what Scottie Pippen did statistically. And to be completely honest with people, it's pretty hard to put a thumb on what Scottie Pippen numbers would have looked like if he didn't play on a team with Michael Jordan. So because of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to excuse the lack of numbers that he posted throughout his career average. And what I'm going to do is just look at his best season and compare that to other all-time great small forwards. Now, obviously, the year I'm referring to is the 93-94 season when Michael Jordan retired and Scottie Pippen posted up 20+ points, almost 9 rebounds, along with 6 assists and nearly 3 steals. This year, historically, is one of the greatest stat lines that the NBA has ever seen. But how exactly does it fare to other small forwards? Looking at some of the individual performances of some of the better years of Dr. J, Rick Barry, and Dominique Wilkins, even though they may not have ever grabbed as many rebounds or facilitated as many assists, the scoring numbers alone prove that these players might have actually had better statistical years than Scottie Pippen. So yeah, it may be true that Dominique Wilkins wasn't the greatest passer of all time. However, you can't overlook the fact that he had seasons where he was putting up 6 to 8 more points than Scottie Pippen's best year. So even though the stat line isn't as full as Scottie Pippen's, you can make a very legitimate argument that these stat lines are indeed better. However, to counter this argument, a lot of people will use the accolades that Scottie Pippen has earned throughout his entire career and pair them with the potential numbers that he could have received to prove the point that Scottie Pippen indeed is a better player than some of the players that I just named. And when you look at the accolades that Scottie Pippen earned throughout his entire career and compare them to the likes of Rick Barry, Dominique Wilkins, and Dr. J, even though there are some accolades such as MVPs and Finals MVPs that Scottie Pippen never received, it is hard to overlook he might not have received as many All-Star selections or even All-NBA appearances, but there are some people who will use the argument that the championships alone put Scottie Pippen above some of these players. Now, the counter argument to this is the only reason why Scottie Pippen has so many accolades on his resume is simply due to the fact that he played on a team with Michael Jordan. And it's kind of hard not to win 6 rings when you're on the team with one of the greatest, if not the greatest player of all time. Further proof to this argument is that Scottie Pippen never found himself on an All-Star team or an All-NBA selection after Michael retired the second time. Also, the success in the playoffs practically vanished as well once Scottie found himself playing for other teams such as Houston and Portland. Now, some people may make the argument that once he found himself in Houston and Portland, he was much older, so the expectations of finals and championships should have completely been out the window at somebody at that age. The role that he was playing at that point in time was completely different than what he was playing in Chicago, so people tend to expunge this off of his record. However, that is completely inaccurate. Let me introduce you to a player named John Havelcheck. John Havelcheck played a very similar role to Scottie Pippen. He was a complementary piece to Bill Russell throughout Bill Russell's later years in the NBA, and after Bill Russell retired from the NBA, John Havelcheck continued his success in the playoffs. In the 70-71 season, John Havelcheck had his best season where he averaged nearly 30 points, 9 rebounds, and almost 8 assists, which again is a better stat line than Scottie Pippen's best season. Not only that, when you go back and you look at John Havlicek's career and his accolades, The numbers match up fairly well with Scottie Pippen, and actually John Havelcheck has more rings than Scottie Pippen. And also to the people out there who make this argument that at the age of 33, Scottie Pippen was just way too old and way too far into his career for him to be a pivotal piece on a championship contending team. Again, John Havelcheck, 33 years old, after Bill Russell retired, was a piece that carried the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals and ended up winning Finals MVP that season as well. Again, doing this at the age of 33. And to top everything off, at the age of 33, John Havelcheck was averaging nearly 23 points, 6 rebounds, and almost 6 assists, a stat line that is fairly similar to Scottie Pippen when he was playing in his prime. So is Scottie Pippen the third greatest small forward of all time? Unfortunately, that is a myth. There's too many players who have individual performances that are much better than Scottie Pippen, such as Julius Erving and Rick Barry. Now, is he a top 5 small forward of all time? Again, I would have to make an argument that that is also a myth. Not only do you have the individual performances of Julius Erving and Rick Barry, but you also have the individual performances along with the accolades of a John Havelcheck that is far superior than Scottie Pippen, which means that Scottie Pippen probably finds himself somewhere between 6 and 10. However, I do want to challenge you on this. Throughout this entire video so far, I have not mentioned Elgin Baylor one time. If you believe that Elgin Baylor is better than Scottie Pippen, then that pushes Scottie Pippen's down a little bit more. Also, depending on who you are, you may believe that Dominique Wilkins is better than Scottie Pippen, so that pushes him down a little bit further as well. And also for the people who might not realize this, but the NBA today, you have players such as Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Kevin Durant who could make a very serious argument within the next 2 to 3 years that they will indeed have better careers and be better all-around players than Scottie Pippen. The next argument that we're going to talk about is the importance of Scottie Pippen when it comes to pairing up with Michael Jordan. On one side, you have this argument that Michael Jordan made Scottie Pippen. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen would be a nobody. Then on the other hand, you have this argument that, well, if it wasn't for Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan will have no rings at all. The only reason why Michael Jordan won a championship is because of Scottie Pippen. Now, I'll just be completely honest with people, both of these arguments are just completely outlandish. On one end, when you have the Scottie Pippen was made by Michael Jordan argument, it's completely false simply due to the fact that Scottie Pippen, in his own right, proved that he was an individual talent that could do multiple things with and without Michael Jordan. Like I stated earlier, the numbers that Scottie Pippen put up with his time with the Chicago Bulls were almost unheard of and were a rarity in NBA history. So to make it seem like a player who's on your team posting up 20 points, nearly 7 to 8 rebounds, 6 assists, nearly 2.5 to 3 steals, to make it seem like that's just a nobody and you can just grab that off of any team is ridiculous. Furthermore, for the people who don't recognize this, Scottie Pippen defensively was so flexible that he guarded nearly every position. To further prove this, if you go back and you look at the NBA Finals where the Bulls are matched up against the Los Angeles Lakers, after James Worthy went down, Scottie Pippen started to guard Magic Johnson. Later on down the timeline, when the Chicago Bulls had a problem guarding a player like Charles Barkley who was giving mismatch issues to some of the bigs, guess who guarded him? Scottie Pippen. Not Michael Jordan, but yes indeed Scottie Pippen. And again, for the people who still have doubt, when you're going up against a team like the Detroit Pistons, who have Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars in the starting lineup, and then a player like Mark Aguirre coming off the bench, you have to come to some conclusion and realize that Michael Jordan can't guard all 3 of those players at the exact same time. Somebody has to be guarding Isaiah Thomas or Mark Aguirre if Jordan is guarding Joe Dumars. It just makes sense. But then on the flip side, they make this argument that Michael Jordan needed Scottie Pippen, and if it wasn't for Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan would have 0 rings. Again, it's pretty hard to prove. To be completely honest with people, if you put a player like Clyde Drexler on Michael Jordan's team, I'm pretty sure you will end up with a very similar result. Also, I don't like this argument because it really doesn't heighten the career of Scottie Pippen. It's used to belittle Michael Jordan's legacy. For whatever reason, we decide to pick and choose who we want to criticize for having too much help. When it comes to Jordan, we criticize him because we say over and over again, yeah, Jordan wasn't able to win anything without having Scottie Pippen because he won 0 championships. Kobe Bryant gets criticized for playing with a team with Shaq, and LeBron James is criticized for going to South Beach and playing with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. However, I've never heard anybody make this argument that Magic Johnson is overrated because he's never won a ring without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. On the flip side of that, I've never heard anybody state that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is overrated because the only reason why he won any championships is because he played with 2 out of the top 3 greatest point guards of all time in Magic Johnson and Oscar Robertson. The truth is, like I said in the last episode, the only way that you're going to win multiple championships is if you have an all-time great on your team. You might pull a Hakeem Olajuwon where you win one championship without any other all-stars on your team. You might be Clyde Drexler and make multiple finals appearances while having little to no help as well. However, the only way that you're going to win 3, 4, potentially 6 championships is if you have an all-time great on your team. So to strip that from Scottie Pippen so you can glorify Michael Jordan's career is completely useless. And finally, people, we're going to talk about the infamous 93-94 season. Now, for people who don't know, this was the year that Michael Jordan retired and Scottie Pippen, quote unquote, had the team by himself. This year, Scottie Pippen put up a stat line that was historically great. Not only that, the Chicago Bulls made it to the second round of the playoffs. They only lost 2 more games to the prior season. This is the year that a lot of people use to make the argument that Scottie Pippen is indeed one of the greatest players of all time. Matter of fact, there are a group of people who would use this argument to make the claim that Scottie Pippen, because of this year alone, is a top 10 player of all time. So let's see if indeed this is true. First, let's just look at his numbers. 22 points, nearly 9 rebounds, almost 5 to 6 assists, nearly 3 steals. Like I stated before, this was a historic year for Scottie Pippen. Very rarely has a stat line like that ever been posted in NBA history, and indeed this was rather impressive. The next thing is Chicago Bulls went from a 57-win team with Michael Jordan, and after Jordan left, they still won 55 games. Now again, this is true, and a lot of people use this argument and give almost all the credit to Scottie Pippen and make it seem like Scottie Pippen just carried a team full of scrubs. However, that is completely inaccurate. The season that Michael Jordan left in the 93-94 year, not only did Scottie Pippen have a career season, but also B.J. Armstrong and Horace Grant did as well. Not only did their performance and overall productivity go up, but they also received all-star selections. So the Chicago Bulls had 3 all-stars on their team. So to make it seem like Scottie Pippen was just carrying a team so well that they only went down 2 wins, again, is a bit overstated, but nevertheless, it did happen. And then from there, we're moving to the playoffs, where Scottie Pippen and Chicago Bulls went all the way to the second round of the playoffs and went up against the New York Knicks and took it all the way to a Game 7. From here, a lot of people blamed the fact that they weren't able to go to the next round was simply because of a blown call. However, I did a little bit more research and went deeper into this, because this was a 7-game series. It's not like this series was wrapped up in 5 or 6 games, and me personally, I just feel like there's no way that we can sit here and make this argument that a whole 7-game series was completely decided by one bad call that happened in the 5th game of the series. And from there, that's when I started to see some things that were fairly concerning about Scottie Pippen. If you go back and you look at what Scottie Pippen averaged throughout the entire series, they're not the greatest numbers of all time. In the series, he averaged nearly 22 points, almost 8 rebounds, nearly 5 assists with 2 steals. Now, all these numbers sound fine, however, he averaged over 3 turnovers, shot below 41% from the field, 31% from 3. So even though he is posting up really good numbers, it's not really all that efficient. Now from there, I didn't stop and I dug a little bit deeper, because I just thought that maybe potentially Scottie Pippen had a few bad games, which really brought down his field goal percentage. However, I'm pretty sure Scottie Pippen had multiple games where he played fairly well. And to some degree, I was correct. However, I was rather disappointed when I started to look at game by game what Scottie Pippen was doing. For example, in the first game, Chicago Bulls ended up losing to the New York Knicks only by 5 points. What makes it worse is that the Chicago Bulls had the lead heading into the 4th quarter. However, when you look at Scottie Pippen's numbers, again, they are a bit concerning. 24 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. All of this sounds very well. However, 5 turnovers, 36.8% from the field, and 25% from 3. Again, these numbers just aren't efficient as well. However, it does get worse, because in Game 2, a very similar situation. Chicago Bulls lose to the New York Knicks in a very close matchup. The Chicago Bulls had the lead heading into the 4th quarter, and Horace Grant and B.J. Armstrong again showed up and played, both of them putting up 23 points. B.J. Armstrong paired his 23 points with 6 assists, and Horace Grant paired his 23 points with 4 rebounds and 3 steals and a block. However, Scottie Pippen, yet again, didn't really perform all that efficiently. Only posted up 22 points, 2 assists, 2 steals, but 3 turnovers, shooting 33% from the field. Now, if he was just a regular player who had a great season because of the lack of superstardom that was around him since Michael Jordan retired, these numbers are more understandable. But when people make this argument that this season proves that he is indeed one of the greatest players of all time, when you start to look at his performances in the playoffs, it really doesn't reciprocate that idea. After looking at that series, I went back to Scottie Pippen's years back in Chicago and looked at the 94-95 season. This is the year that a lot of people, again, use to define Scottie Pippen and his career and his greatness, because this is a year where he borderline led the entire team in every statistical category. However, what a lot of people fail to realize is that even though Scottie Pippen may have been leading this team in almost all statistical categories, he really wasn't leading this team to the playoffs. Before Michael Jordan came out of retirement, Scottie Pippen and the Chicago Bulls, they were barely above 500. And if it wasn't for Michael Jordan coming out of retirement, there's a very likely scenario where the Chicago Bulls don't even make the playoffs. And even if they do, they would have only made the 8th seed and got knocked out of the first round. So again, I start to question, is Scottie Pippen and his relevancy after Michael Jordan left in the middle of his career, is that a bit overstated? It seemed like when Scottie Pippen was met with any type of adversity, especially in the playoffs, he tends to form inconsistently under that type of pressure. But when you're an all-time great player, you don't have that excuse. Everybody's expecting you to perform at a very high level every night, regardless of the situation. Having this type of characteristic is the reason why you're labeled as an all-time great player. So yes, statistically speaking, Scottie Pippen had a great year. Actually had 2 great seasons once Michael Jordan left. However, that really never amounted to much. Same thing can be said once he left Chicago and played for Houston and Portland. Even though a lot of people may make excuses to the lack of success Scottie Pippen had in the playoffs, regardless if it was a bad call or just due to old age, you can't overlook the fact that Scottie Pippen never really rose to the occasion. And to me, that is what defines greatness. So because of this, I really don't see the correlation of all-time greatness when it comes to the 93-94 season that Scottie Pippen had. Even though, yes, statistically speaking, he had a historic season, it really doesn't matter that much, because when it came to winning the playoffs, Scottie Pippen was unable to do so. Now, with all that being said, people, I hope you enjoyed the video. Time to wrap up this episode of NBA Mythbusters. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to be updated on more awesome NBA content, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And as always, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter so you can be updated on all the videos that I will be uploading before it actually makes it to the channel. And if you have any suggestions on the next episode of NBA Mythbusters that you want to see, make sure you leave that in the comment section below. With all that being said, I will see you all next time. Peace.